In the corporate world, the greatest weapon you have is your silence. For 5 years, Beau and I were masters of it. We were the rising stars of the firm, two men who looked like the perfect straight success stories. But a mandatory retreat in the mountains stripped away the glass walls. I thought I knew who Beau was. I thought I knew the rules of our professional friendship. But when the lights went low and the truth came out, he didn't just break the rules, he shattered them. He was never just my colleague, and he was never as straight as he let the world believe. The offices of Sterling Vance were designed to be transparent, all floor-to-ceiling glass and open-concept desks, yet I had never lived in a place with more secrets. My name is Adrian, and for half a decade I have been an architect of my own cage. I am a senior partner, a man of cold logic and ironclad discipline. And for every one of those 5 years, Beau had been the sun I was forced to orbit without ever getting close enough to burn. Beau was the kind of man who commanded a room without saying a word. He was broad-shouldered, with a laugh that felt like a warm hearth in a cold building. He was the ultimate guy, the one who talked about Sunday football, the one who had a string of beautiful dates at every company gala, the one everyone assumed was as straight as the lines on his tailored suits. We were a power pair. We closed the deals no one else could. We spent 14 hours a day together, fueled by black coffee and the kind of high-stakes adrenaline that makes your blood hum. Our colleagues joked that we were work-married, a term that always made a bitter taste rise in my throat, because to me, it wasn't a joke. It was a haunting. Every time Beau's hand lingered on my shoulder after a win, every time he'd catch my eye across a boardroom and give that small secret smirk, it was a needle to my heart. I had convinced myself that I was the only one feeling the pull. I was the gay one hiding in plain sight, and he was the straight best friend who was safely out of reach. It was a comfortable, agonizing lie.
The email that changed everything was deceptively simple. Subject: Apex Leadership Retreat. Mandatory. Mandatory, Beau groaned, leaning against the glass door of my office. He looked tired, his tie loosened, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked human. 3 days in the Blue Ridge Mountains, no laptops, no cell service, just vulnerability exercises and bad catering. Tell me you can get us out of this, Adrian. It's from the board, Beau, I said, my voice as neutral as the gray walls of my office. Even we aren't that powerful. Beau walked into my office and sat on the edge of my desk, a move that was far too intimate for a workplace, yet he did it with the casual ease of a man who didn't know he was ruining me. Well, if I'm going to be trapped in the woods, I'm glad it's with you. You're the only person in this building who doesn't make me want to walk into the ocean. I forced a laugh, my fingers gripping my fountain pen so hard I thought the casing might crack. Careful, Beau. People might think you actually like me. He didn't laugh back. He just looked at me, a long, searching look that felt like he was trying to read the fine print of my soul. They don't know the half of it, Adrian, he said softly. Then he stood up and walked out before I could ask him what that meant. The lodge was a brutalist structure of cedar and stone, perched on the cliffside that felt like the end of the world. By the second night, the corporate synergy had devolved into raw nerves. The air was thin, the fire was hot, and the whiskey was flowing too freely. The facilitator, a man who specialized in radical honesty, gathered us in a circle. "The office is a theater," he told us, "but tonight there is no stage. I want you to tell the person sitting to your left the one thing you've been protecting from them, the one thing that would change how they see you." The circle shifted. Tension crackled like the logs in the hearth. I was sitting to the left of Beau. I felt his presence beside me like a physical heat. My mind raced, trying to come up with something safe. I'd tell him I actually hated his choice of font on the last proposal. I'd tell him I thought his car was too loud. I'd stay in the shallow water where it was safe. But when Beau turned to me, the straight golden boy of Sterling Vance was gone.
His eyes were bloodshot, not from the whiskey, but from a weariness that looked like it had been decades in the making. "Adrian," he whispered. The room went silent. Our colleagues leaned in, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Beau didn't look at the facilitator. He didn't look at the CEO. He reached out and grabbed my hand, right there in the center of the circle, his fingers interlocked with mine with a strength that felt like a drowning man grabbing a rope. "For 5 years," Beau said, his voice shaking with a terrifying honesty, "I have let you believe that I am the man this company wants me to be. I've talked about women I didn't love. I've played the part of the bro and the teammate because I was terrified that if I showed you the truth, I'd lose the only thing that matters to me in that city." A gasp went around the room, but Beau didn't flinch. "I'm not straight, Adrian, and I'm not your colleague. I am a man who has been in love with you since the day you interviewed me, and I can't spend another hour pretending that this is just business." The world stopped. The fire felt cold. My heart wasn't beating, it was crashing. Beau, my straight colleague, had just burned down the theater. And as he stood up and walked out into the freezing mountain night, I realized that for the first time in 5 years, the architecture of our lie was gone. We were standing in the ruins. The silence in the lodge was thick, a suffocating blanket of shock that held the rest of the team in place. I could feel their eyes on me, the senior partner, the man of logic, waiting for my reaction. But I wasn't there anymore. My body was in that cedar-scented room, but my soul had followed Beau out into the freezing mountain air the moment his hand left mine. I stood up. I didn't look at the CEO. I didn't look at the facilitator who had poked the bear. I simply walked toward the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the night. The cold hit me like a physical blow, a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat of the fire. The Blue Ridge Mountains were draped in a silver frost, the moon hanging low and sharp like a blade. I scanned the darkness, my breath coming in ragged white plumes. "Beau!" I called out. My voice sounded small against the vastness of the pines. "Beau, stop!" I saw him near the edge of the overlook, a silhouette of broad shoulders and bowed head. He was leaning against a stone wall that looked down into a 1,000-foot drop of shadowed valley. He looked like a man who had jumped off a cliff and was waiting to hit the ground. As I approached, he didn't turn. "Don't come any closer, Adrian," he said, his voice jagged and raw. "I just ended my career. I just ended ours. You should go back inside and tell them I've had too much to drink. Tell them I'm having a breakdown. Save yourself." "Is that what you think this is?" I asked, stopping a few feet behind him. The tension between us was so thick it felt like a third person standing in the dark. A breakdown? Beau whirled around. The moonlight hit his face, revealing the tears he hadn't let anyone see inside. "What else do you call it? I just told a room full of the most powerful people in our industry that I've been lying to them for 5 years. I told them I'm in love with my boss. In our world, that's not a confession, Adrian. That's a suicide note." "You're not my subordinate, Beau. You're my partner," I countered, stepping into his space. The scent of him, the cedar wood and the sharp tang of the cold was overwhelming. "You're wrong. You didn't end anything. You just finally stopped the clock." Beau let out a harsh, cynical laugh. "The clock? I've been counting every second for 1,800 days. Every meeting where I had to watch you smile at someone else. Every flight where we sat by side for 6 hours and I couldn't even let my arm touch yours. Do you have any idea what that does to a man? To pretend to be straight because you're afraid the person you love would look at you with disgust." "Disgust?" I felt a sudden hot flash of anger. "You think I'd feel disgust?" "You're the Ice King, Adrian. You're the man who lives by the handbook. I thought you were like them. I thought you saw this as a weakness." I moved then, closing the distance until I was inches from him. I grabbed the lapels of his heavy wool coat, forcing him to look at me. "You idiot!" I whispered, my voice trembling with the force of 5 years of repressed agony. "I didn't live by the handbook because I believed in it. I lived by it because I was terrified of you." Beau froze. His breath hitched. "What?" "I thought you were the one who would judge me," I admitted, the words spilling out like blood from a wound. "I saw you with those women. I heard you talk about the game. I watched you play the ultimate guy so perfectly that I believed it. I spent 5 years mourning a man who was sitting 3 feet away from me because I thought he could never love me back. You think you've been in a cage? I built the cage, Beau. I locked myself in and threw away the key because I couldn't bear the thought of you knowing I wanted you." The world went perfectly still. The wind died down, and for a moment, the only sound was the synchronized thrumming of our hearts. Beau's hands came up, hovering near my waist before finally settling there, his grip firm and desperate. "Adrian, say it again." "I love you," I said, the words finally free. "I've loved you since the afternoon you walked into my office for that interview and told me my tie was crooked. I've loved you through every board meeting, every late-night flight, and every silent drink we've ever had. I was just too much of a coward to be the one to say it first." Beau didn't wait for another word. He surged forward, his mouth crashing into mine. It wasn't a soft kiss. It wasn't the kind of romance you see in movies. It was a collision. It was 5 years of hunger, of professional distance, of glass walls and corporate lies all shattering at once. It tasted of salt and desperation and the sudden, violent realization that we had wasted so much time. His hands moved into my hair, pulling me closer, as if he were trying to merge our very shadows. I gripped his coat, anchoring myself to him as the mountains seemed to spin around us. For the first time in my life, the Ice King was gone. I was just a man, finally being held by the only person who had ever truly seen me. When we finally pulled apart, the cold felt different. It was no longer a threat. It was a witness. "What happens tomorrow?" Beau asked, his forehead resting against mine. "When we walk back into that lodge, when we go back to Manhattan." I looked at the glass building of the lodge in the distance, where our colleagues were no doubt whispering our names. The career I had spent my life building felt like a handful of ash compared to the heat of Beau's hand in mine. "Tomorrow," I said. My voice regained its senior partner's strength, but with a new, dangerous edge. "We walk in there together. We aren't the dream team anymore, Beau. We're something much more powerful, and if they don't like it, let them try to stop us." Beau smiled, a real smile, the kind that didn't reach for a camera or a client. "I've been waiting a long time to hear you say together and mean it." We stood there for a long time, looking out over the valley. The lie was dead. The silence was over. But as we turned to head back toward the lights of the lodge, I knew that the real battle, the battle for our future in a world that expected us to be straight colleagues, was only just beginning. The walk back to the lodge felt like a march toward a firing squad, but with one crucial difference. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't walking alone. Beau's hand was a steady weight in mine, our fingers interlaced with a defiance that felt more radical than any business deal we'd ever struck. As we pushed open the heavy oak doors, the hum of conversation died instantly. The room was a tableau of frozen faces. Our colleagues, the VPs, the analysts, the HR directors, were scattered around the fireplace, drinks forgotten in their hands. The CEO, Arthur Sterling, stood by the hearth. He was a man who cultivated an image of modern leadership, but ruled with an iron fist of traditionalism. He looked at our joined hands, and his eyes turned into chips of flint. "Adrian, Beau," Arthur said, his voice echoing in the rafters. "I trust the mountain air helped clear the confusion from earlier." I stepped forward, not letting go of Beau. I felt the Ice King persona settling over me, but it was reinforced by something stronger now. There was no confusion, Arthur, only clarity. 5 years of it, actually. "This is a professional retreat," Arthur snapped, his face reddening. "What happened tonight was a lapse in judgment. It was a breach of the culture we've built at Sterling Vance. We represent clients who expect a certain stability, a certain image." "You mean a straight image," Beau said, stepping up beside me. His voice was no longer jagged, it was resonant, calm, and dangerous. "You mean you want the golden boy to keep playing the part so the investors stay comfortable. But that boy is gone, Arthur. I'm a man, and I'm done lying for your bottom line." The room gasped. To challenge Arthur Sterling was corporate suicide. But we weren't just employees anymore. We were a unit. "You're both under contract," Arthur hissed, stepping closer. "There are morality clauses. There are non-competes. If you think you can turn my firm into a soap opera, I will strip you of every share, every bonus, and every recommendation you've earned." I felt Beau tense, but I squeezed his hand. I looked Arthur directly in the eye. "The Miller account," I said quietly. "The Henderson merger. The Tokyo expansion. Who wrote those contracts, Arthur? Who stayed up until 4 a.m. for 3 months to ensure there wasn't a single loophole?" Arthur blinked. "You did, Adrian. That's your job." "And who sold them?" I continued. "Who sat in the rooms with the skeptics and made them believe in a future they couldn't see? Who turned your failing firm into a titan?" "Beau did," Arthur muttered. "Exactly," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "We are the firm, Arthur. If you fire us or try to strip us, we walk out that door together, and we take the Miller account, the Henderson merger, and the Tokyo expansion with us, because those clients don't sign with Sterling Vance, they sign with us." The silence that followed was absolute. I could see the gears turning in Arthur's head. He was a shark, and he had just realized he was in a tank with 2 bigger ones. "Is this a threat, Adrian?" Arthur asked. "No," I replied, my voice softening as I looked at Beau. "It's a transition. We aren't hiding anymore. We are your senior partners, and we are together. If the culture of this firm can't handle the truth, then the culture is what needs to change, not us." Arthur looked around the room. He saw the faces of the younger staff. He saw the shift in the atmosphere. The radical honesty he had forced upon us had backfired in the most beautiful way possible. He sighed, the fight leaving him as he realized the cost of his pride. "Fine," he said, turning back to the fire. "But don't expect a wedding announcement in the company newsletter." "We don't need your newsletter, Arthur," Beau said, a grin finally breaking across his face. "We have everything we need."
We left the lodge that night. We didn't wait for the shuttle. We took Beau's car and drove down the winding mountain roads as the sun began to peek over the ridges. The city was waiting for us. Manhattan, with its glass towers and its relentless pace. But it felt different now. The glass walls were gone. The straight masks were in the rearview mirror. We stopped at a diner on the outskirts of the mountains, the kind of place with neon signs and smell of burnt coffee. We sat in a corner booth, our knees touching under the table. "You really told him off," Beau said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anyone talk to Arthur like that." "I had a very good reason to be brave," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "What now?" Beau asked. "Now," I said, looking at the man I had spent 5 years mourning while he sat right next to me. "We go back. We work, we live, and we never, ever go back into that cage." Beau leaned across the table and kissed me, a slow, public, effortless kiss that tasted like freedom. "I think I can handle that."
They say the corporate world is built on steel and stone, but it's actually built on the breath we hold when we're afraid to be ourselves. Adrian and Beau spent 5 years holding theirs. Thank you for joining us for this chapter of Gay Stories Chronicles. If this story of courage in the face of the glass ceiling moved you, please take a moment to subscribe. We tell these stories because everyone deserves to see themselves represented, even in the coldest boardrooms. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a beau in your life? Someone you were afraid to love because of the world around you? We want to hear your story. The strongest architecture in the world isn't made of glass. It's made of the truth. Good night.